Hello, I'm Neil Dealey, co-founder and partner of Architects and Urban Planners Metropolitan Workshop. Welcome to Reshaped, a podcast series to mark our 15th year and to record perspectives on how the built environment is changing and needs to change in this historic moment. We asked leading thinkers and doers to respond to issues highlighted by the pandemic while we're in the throes of change, and memories and perspectives are fresh. Has the door opened to a new era? We think so. Our speaker in this podcast doesn't really need an introduction. His company is one of the best known brands in the built environment. That's because it always innovated in the locations it chose to transform and the type of homes and places it developed, for which he and his company have won more than 400 awards. Now it is spearheading the revolution in applying technology to building new homes. Tom Bloxham, chairman and founder of Urban Splash, explains why.
Okay, let me start the story. We're sort of accidental developers, and I arrived as a penniless student in Manchester in the early 80s. And I saw an amazing city, but a city that's sort of forgotten about itself. That was isolated, that was desolate, that at 6 o'clock at night, the shutters came down. No one lived in the city centre. You couldn't buy a pint of milk or a loaf of bread. And it was also a huge opportunity, and there were all these unloved buildings. Urban Splash started to make its reputation buying up these unloved buildings and refurbishing them. So what might you think has all this got to do with modern methods of construction or modular house building? And I suppose it was through being fascinated by design and fascinated by architecture and fascinated by the way our cities had changed that we started looking, first of all, at refurbishments, then at new builds, often running architectural competitions. And then really post the global financial crisis, we started thinking about housing and houses rather than flats and apartments. And we spent some time looking at what was on offer. And actually, irrespective of style and what style you like, there were a number of things about most mass house builders. They had very small rooms, they were in cul-de-sacs, they were car-friendly rather than pedestrian-friendly, they were cellular, and they were very inflexible. And we thought that if we wanted to build a new idea of home, if we wanted to build an urban splash home, an urban splash place, what would that be like? And we thought we wanted a load of choice, we wanted to be very green, we want to be looking forward rather than backwards. So we started looking at supply chain and finding out who we could work with to build us new modular houses. We found a company called SIG PLC. Eventually, we were doing more and more business through their factory, so much so that we eventually bought the factory from them and set it up as our own factory. And so 2 years ago, we launched a global search of who we wanted to come and work with us, to invest with us, to really grow and develop this business. And we ended up with two investors. One was Homes England, part of the UK government, who took a small 5% stake, and also Seksui House, who took a 35% stake in our modular business. Now, I must admit, I'd never heard of Seksui House before we did the deal. They're actually the biggest house builder in the world. They built 2.5 million homes since 1960, and they build more houses every year in Japan than the top 4 UK house builders put together. What we found by building homes in a factory, we could build homes a lot quicker. Perhaps more importantly than that, we get better quality, much tighter tolerances. It's also interesting in that we can actually recruit a much more diverse workforce. We can train them better. They're working in the warm and the weather. We're not weather dependent. You know, if it snows or rains, the production line continues. It doesn't stop as it does on site. When the house is finished, it gets delivered on the back of a lorry, quite literally to site. So minimum disruption of the neighbours. It gets assembled very quickly, and the houses get fully assembled in another month or so's time. So it reduces the time we need, it increases the quality, and it increases the design options that we have. So we found that the MMC is incredibly important. Modular construction is still only a tiny part of the industry. And I think that's for a number of different reasons. First of all, there are a lot of conventional house builders who've invested a lot of money and time in their training, their personal reputations in the way they do things. And the house builders are incredibly efficient. They're still building cheaper than we're building conventionally. But I think the times are changing. I think the Industrial Revolution wasn't something that happened in Manchester for 20 years in the 19th century. It's an ongoing process. sauces that our mothers would have made in the kitchen, we're now buying in packets and jars from the supermarkets. Everything is becoming industrialized. Housing is one of the last things to be industrialized, but I think it's the future. And I think we'll see more and more people working on prefabrication and modern methods of construction. COVID has clearly been a very difficult time, and our feelings go out for everybody who's been affected by it personally. And it's certainly not good news, but actually we have all learned things from it. But I think what we've also seen, as well as new ways of working, we've seen a realization of the value. And urban splashers have always made homes with high ceilings, with big windows, with lots of space, with gardens. And this has always been seen as a bit maverick and a bit unusual and not worthwhile. But I think the pandemic has really taught people the value of quality and space and placemaking. And for us, it's not just about making great houses. That's obviously important, but architecture is much more than that. It's also about placemaking. And so we're really passionate about making places, and the space outside the buildings is as important, if not more important, than the buildings themselves. And so therefore, we like to build near water. We like to build near parks. We're really excited by a scheme we're doing in the Metropolitan Workshop in Milton Keynes in Campbell Park. It's an amazing scheme right between the canal in Milton Keynes and the town centre, adjacent to Campbell Park, doing amazing space. And we're thinking, very carefully about how to relate to the park, how it relates to outdoor spaces, and give everybody some private space, some communal space, and some public space. We all love beautiful homes. And actually, architecture, surprisingly, has been driven by technology. And if you look at a Tudor house, it's got tiny little windows because that's all they could make with the glass. Georgian get 12 by 12 inches, Victorian bigger. 1930s, they learned to make plate glass and curved it. And so the whole structure of buildings changed. As steel frame came in, buildings got bigger. As concrete and elevators came in, skyscrapers were possible. So technology has always driven the built form. Now, all of a sudden in housing in 1945, for some reason, we seemed to go reactionary, and the majority of houses went backwards, and they started becoming pastiche of Georgian and Victorian Edwardian buildings. But I think architecture, domestic architecture, like everything else, should be a product of technology. And I think as technology improves, we should allow our housing to improve. So we really love working with new technology. I think we've only just started the process, to be honest with you. And although we're building our houses in factories, it's still largely a building site inside a shed. And what we're looking forward to is using better and better use of technology, getting more sophisticated production lines, becoming assemblers rather than builders, working with suppliers of pre-manufacturing elements of it, getting better reliability into the components, getting better quality in the components, and making houses more economically. And so I think by the use of technology and by being super efficient and being designed really cleverly, we can make our wonderful homes available to more and more people and make them more and more affordable and make them in great places. And that's what excites us. And that's what makes us get up early every morning and work hard.
That was Tom Bloxham of Urban Splash. Urban Splashers link up with Seksui of Japan, the world's largest modular house builder, marks it out as the UK's leading innovator in housing. As Tom says, technology has always driven architecture. Yet that ceased to be so in the 1940s. House builders settled instead for historic styles using traditional building methods. They stopped innovating, instead focusing very successfully on efficiency. It's a familiar story. Tom thinks that people want something different, more flexible, contemporary, and set within a better kind of place, which he argues is probably more important than the buildings themselves. We'll soon see if homebuyers agree. If they do, we are likely to see big changes in the way British homes get built. You can listen to other podcasts in the Reshape series at all the major providers, or go to our website, metwork.co.uk. Series directed by Lee Mallet, produced by David Michon and Justina Green, recorded and edited by Sean Crook.